To the Navy, Commander Rebecca Torres was a historic milestone. To her SEAL platoon, she was a dangerous experiment, a political symbol, untested in battle. Chief Hayes and his men waited for her to crack. That test arrived in a dusty Afghan compound where bad intel turned a standard capture mission into a deadly ambush. Outnumbered 2-1 by hardened fighters, Torres faced a split-second choice: retreat or attack. She chose violence. In 11 brutal minutes, the symbol vanished. In her place stood a warrior who directed the assault while dropping 7 targets with 7 shots. This is the gripping story of how a leader silenced her critics not with rank, but with lethal, undeniable competence. From wherever you're watching, let us know in the comments. And if this story has earned you respect, click like so others can find it too. The operations center at Camp Lejeune carried the perpetual hum of ventilation systems and radio chatter. Commander Rebecca Torres sat at the head of the conference table, her uniform pressed to regulation, her hair pulled back in a tight bun that revealed the hard lines of her jaw. Around her sat 12 SEAL operators, men who'd spent the last 3 weeks under her command and still hadn't decided what to make of her. She was the first woman to command a SEAL platoon in active deployment rotation. The Navy had made it official 6 months ago, complete with press releases and carefully worded statements about capability and merit. But what happened in press releases and what happened in team rooms were 2 different universes. Torres opened the mission folder in front of her, her movements precise and economical. Target package is a compound in eastern Afghanistan, she began, her voice carrying the flat authority of someone who'd briefed 1,000 operations. High-value target, confirmed presence, narrow window for capture. She clicked the remote. Satellite imagery filled the screen. A walled compound, 3 buildings, limited access points, standard layout for the region. One of the operators in the back, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Hayes, leaned back in his chair with his arms crossed. He'd been a SEAL for 14 years, 6 deployments, more firefights than he cared to count. He watched Torres with the expression of someone observing a curiosity rather than a commander. "What's the threat assessment?" he asked, his tone just formal enough to avoid insubordination. Torres didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed on the screen. Intel suggests 12 to 15 armed combatants, experienced fighters, former Taliban, possibly with training from foreign advisors. She advanced to the next slide. "They know we're looking for the HVT. Security has been tightened in the past 48 hours. Another operator spoke up. "Rules of engagement. Standard escalation protocol," Torres replied. "We're going in for capture. Lethal force authorized if the situation requires it." Hayes shifted in his seat. "Ma'am, with respect, this is a hot compound. 15 fighters who know we're coming. That's not a capture mission. That's a gunfight waiting to happen." Torres turned to face him directly. Her expression didn't change. "Then we'll be ready for a gunfight, Chief." The room went quiet. Hayes held her gaze for a moment, then looked away first, his jaw tight. The rest of the briefing proceeded in professional silence, each operator taking notes, asking tactical questions, receiving answers. But underneath the formality ran a current of doubt that Torres could feel as clearly as the air conditioning against her skin. After the briefing ended, the operators filed out in small groups, their voices low as they headed toward the team room. Torres remained at the table, organizing her files with the same methodical precision she applied to everything. She knew what they were saying about her. She'd heard it before, in different bases, different commands, different team rooms. A woman couldn't lead SEALs. Not really. Not when it mattered. She could pass the training, sure. Could meet the standards, check the boxes, earn the trident. But when rounds started flying and blood started spilling, something essential would be missing. Instinct, aggression, the willingness to become violence incarnate when the mission required it. They didn't say it to her face. They were too professional for that. But she heard it in the pauses before they answered her questions, saw it in the way they double-checked her decisions, felt it in the extra second of hesitation before they acknowledged her orders. Commander Rebecca Torres had spent 8 years proving herself. She'd graduated badass in the top 15% of her class. She'd completed sniper school, advanced urban combat training, and close-quarters battle courses with scores that matched or exceeded her male counterparts. She'd deployed twice as a platoon officer, leading operations that resulted in 0 friendly casualties and multiple successful captures of high-value targets. Her record was immaculate, her competence undeniable. And still, every morning when she put on her uniform, she carried the weight of being a symbol rather than simply a SEAL. The pressure to be perfect, to never make mistakes, to prove that her presence wasn't a liability manufactured by politicians and activists who didn't understand what it meant to lead men into kill zones. She closed the folder and stood, her back straight, her face composed. Outside this room, she would be what she always was: calm, competent, unshakable. But in the quiet moment before she opened the door, she allowed herself one deep breath, one acknowledgement of the exhaustion that came from carrying this particular burden. Then she opened the door and walked out, her boots clicking against the polished floor with the rhythm of certainty. The team room smelled like gun oil and stale coffee. Gear hung from hooks along the walls, weapons racked in precise rows, maps and satellite photos covering every available surface. The operators gathered there now, some cleaning weapons, others reviewing mission details, all of them speaking in the abbreviated language of men who'd worked together long enough to communicate in fragments. Hayes sat on a footlocker, breaking down his M4 with practiced efficiency. Next to him, Petty Officer First Class Diego Santos checked magazines, counting rounds with mechanical precision. "What do you think?" Santos asked quietly, his eyes on his work. Hayes didn't look up. "About what?" "Tomorrow, the mission, her." Hayes was quiet for a moment, his hands continuing their familiar task. "I think she briefs well. I think she knows doctrine. I think she's competent in all the ways the Navy measures competence." Santos heard what Hayes didn't say. But I've never seen her in a gunfight." Hayes set down a piece of his rifle and finally looked at Santos. "None of us have. And tomorrow, if intel is right, we're walking into one." Another operator, Lieutenant Junior Grade Aaron Mitchell, spoke up from across the room. "She's been deployed before. It's not like she's fresh out of training." Hayes nodded. "I know. I read her file. Good operations, clean outcomes. But leading a platoon into a hot compound against experienced fighters." He shook his head. "That's different. That's when you find out what someone's really made of." The room fell quiet again, each man absorbed in his own thoughts and preparations. They were professionals. They would execute the mission to standard regardless of their personal feelings. But trust in combat was earned in combat, and Torres hadn't had the chance to earn it yet. That opportunity was coming tomorrow. The pre-mission brief started at 0400. The operators assembled in full kit, weapons loaded, night vision mounted on helmets, faces painted with camouflage. Torres stood before them in identical gear, her plate carrier sitting heavy on her shoulders, her sidearm secured at her hip. She went through the mission one more time: infiltration route, breach points, room clearing sequences, casualty evacuation procedures, contingencies for compromise. Her voice never wavered, never rushed, each detail delivered with clinical precision. When she finished, she looked at each operator in turn. Questions? Silence. "Good." Torres pulled her rifle from where it leaned against the wall and chambered around. The metallic sound echoed in the quiet room. "Load up. Wheels up in 20. The flight to the target area took 90 minutes, the helos flying low and fast through darkness. Inside the bird, operators sat in silence, each man running through his mental checklist, visualizing his sector, his responsibilities, his actions on contact. Torres sat near the door, her rifle across her lap, her eyes forward. She wasn't thinking about proving herself, wasn't thinking about gender or politics or the weight of symbolism. She was thinking about the mission, about angles of fire and room entry techniques, about the 12 to 15 armed men who would try to kill her team in approximately 43 minutes. This was what she'd trained for, what she'd spent 8 years preparing to do. Command wasn't about speeches or inspiration. It was about making the right decisions under pressure, about keeping her people alive while accomplishing the objective. Everything else was noise. The helos touched down 3 kilometers from the target. The ramps dropped and operators moved out into the Afghan night, boots hitting packed earth, formations tightening as they began their approach. Torres moved with them, her position in the middle of the patrol where she could control the flow without being at the front, where platoon commanders traditionally positioned themselves. Hayes, walking point, noticed but said nothing. They covered the distance in 40 minutes, moving through terrain that alternated between rocky outcroppings and sparse vegetation. No lights, no sound except boots on dirt and the occasional rustle of equipment. The compound appeared ahead, walls rising from the darkness, a single dim light visible in one of the buildings. The team held at their assault position, weapons trained on the compound, waiting for Torres's command. She keyed her radio, her voice barely above a whisper. Static positions. Stand by. The operators moved into their assigned positions, covering every angle of approach. Torres pulled out a thermal imaging device and scanned the compound. Heat signatures appeared on the screen. Not 12 to 15 fighters. More. She counted 23 distinct signatures, most of them clustered in the main building, several more moving in patrol patterns around the perimeter. She keyed the radio again. Be advised, threat count is higher than intel suggested. Estimate 2-3 armed combatants. Adjust accordingly. Hayes's voice came back tense. Ma'am, that changes the tactical picture. We're outnumbered. Torres continued scanning, her mind processing the new information, running calculations. They could abort, call for additional support, wait for a better opportunity. That would be the safe decision, the defensible decision. No one could fault her for exercising caution when facing odds that had shifted dramatically from the initial brief. But the HVT was in that compound right now. The intelligence window was closing. By tomorrow, he could be gone, disappeared into the network of safe houses and sympathizers that made men like him so difficult to find. This was the moment, the only moment. Torres made her decision. We proceed. Revised entry plan. Breaching Team Alpha hits the north entrance simultaneously with support Team Bravo on the west wall. We split their response, create confusion, maintain momentum. She paused. This only works if we move fast and stay aggressive. No hesitation. Understood? A chorus of quiet acknowledgments came back over the radio. Hayes added one more comment. Ma'am, that's a lot of gunfire in a confined space. I know, Torres replied. Weapons free on my command. Let's move. The assault unfolded with the violent precision of a controlled explosion. Breaching charges blew both entry points simultaneously, the concussive force shattering doors and sending debris flying into darkened rooms. Operators flooded through the gaps, their movements practiced and instinctive. Torres entered behind the first wave, her rifle up, scanning sectors as the team flowed through the compound. Gunfire erupted immediately. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness, rounds cracking through the air with the distinct snap of near misses. The enemy fighters had been alert, ready, and they responded with disciplined fire that forced the entry team to take cover. One operator went down, hit in the plate carrier, the impact knocking him off his feet. Torres saw it happen, saw the man roll behind a low wall, saw Hayes move to cover him. Then she stopped thinking and started acting. Her rifle came up smooth and fast. She acquired a target, squeezed the trigger. The fighter dropped. She transitioned to the next target without pause, fired twice. Center mass. He fell. Movement to her left. She pivoted, fired, moved. 3 rounds. Another fighter down. Her movements were economical, precise, no wasted motion. Each shot deliberate. Each transition instant. She wasn't faster than her operators. She was exactly as fast as she needed to be. No more. No less. The firefight intensified. The interior of the compound became a maze of smoke, shadows, and sustained gunfire. Torres moved through it with methodical efficiency, her voice cutting through the chaos on the radio. Bravo team, shift left. You have 2 targets in the eastern room. Alpha, press forward. Don't let them consolidate. She fired as she spoke, dropping another fighter who appeared in a doorway. Her situational awareness was total. She knew where every operator was, where the enemy was concentrating, where gaps were forming in their defense. Hayes, clearing a hallway 20 meters to her right, heard her voice on the radio and looked over in time to see her engage 3 targets in rapid succession. Each shot found its mark, each threat eliminated with mechanical efficiency. His doubt began to crack. The gunfight lasted 11 minutes. When the last shots echoed into silence, 12 enemy fighters lay dead. Another 8 had surrendered, hands raised, weapons discarded. The HVT was in custody, pulled from a fortified room in the back of the compound, his face pale with the realization that his protection had failed. Torres stood in the center of the main room, her rifle still at the ready, scanning for threats that no longer existed. Her breathing was controlled, steady. Her hands weren't shaking. Around her, operators were conducting security sweeps, zip-tying prisoners, calling out room clears. Hayes approached her, his own weapon lowered. "Ma'am." Torres turned to face him. "Report. Building secure. HVT in custody. 1 minor casualty. Already treated. No serious injuries." He paused, his expression different now, changed. "Ma'am, I counted your shots. 7 targets. 7 kills." Torres looked at him without expression. "The mission required it." "Yes, ma'am." Hayes hesitated, then continued. "I also heard you directing the assault while engaging. I've never seen anyone do both that effectively under fire." Torres lowered her rifle slightly. "That's the job, Chief. Command means making decisions while executing. If I can't do both, I shouldn't be here." Hayes held her gaze. For the first time since she'd taken command, he saw her clearly, not as a symbol or an experiment or a political statement, as a warrior. Someone who'd just proven in the most definitive way possible that she belonged exactly where she was. "Yes, ma'am," he said quietly. "You're right." The respect in his voice was unmistakable. The exfil was clean. The team loaded the HVT and prisoners onto the helos and lifted off without incident. During the flight back, Torres sat in the same position she'd occupied on the way in. But the atmosphere in the bird had changed. Operators who'd avoided looking at her directly now caught her eye and nodded. Small gestures, quiet acknowledgments. The kind of communication that happened between professionals who'd shared violence and survived it together. Back at base, the debrief took place in the same room where she'd briefed the mission 18 hours earlier. The operations officer reviewed the after-action report, noting the higher-than-expected enemy count, the modified entry plan, the successful capture of the HVT with minimal friendly casualties. When he finished, he looked at Torres. "Commander, your decision to proceed despite the changed threat assessment was bold. Some might say, risky." Torres met his gaze. The mission parameters supported action. The team was capable. The objective was critical. The decision was sound. The operations officer smiled slightly. "The results support that assessment." He closed the folder. "Well done, Commander. Excellent work." After the official debrief ended and most personnel had left, Hayes remained behind. He approached Torres where she stood collecting her notes. "Ma'am, can I speak freely?" Torres looked up. "Go ahead, Chief." Hayes took a breath. "When you took command, I had doubts. Not about your qualifications. Those were clear. But about whether you could lead in combat. Whether you'd have what it takes when everything goes to hell." He paused. "I was wrong." Torres remained silent, letting him continue. "What you did out there tonight wasn't just good leadership. It was exceptional. You made the right call on a bad situation. You commanded while engaging. And you put 7 hostiles down with 7 shots." Hayes's voice carried genuine respect now. "I've worked with a lot of officers. Most of them are good. Some are great. What you did tonight puts you in that second category." Torres absorbed his words without visible reaction. Then she spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "Chief, I appreciate what you're saying, but I need you to understand something." She set her notes down. "I'm not here to be exceptional. I'm not here to prove that women can do this job. I'm here to do this job. Period. The same way you're here to do it. The same way every SEAL is here to do it." She held his gaze. "Tonight wasn't about me being a woman who can fight. It was about a platoon commander executing a mission successfully. That's all it should ever be." Hayes nodded slowly. "You're right. But you have to know that what you did tonight changed minds, not just mine. The whole team's." "Good," Torres replied. "Then maybe next time, they won't hesitate. Maybe next time they'll just trust the plan and execute. That's all I've ever wanted." She picked up her notes and turned toward the door. Hayes called after her. "Ma'am?" She stopped and looked back. "That's exactly what we'll do." Torres allowed herself the smallest hint of a smile. "Outstanding, Chief. Get some rest." We briefed the next mission in 12 hours. She walked out, leaving Hayes standing in the empty briefing room, finally understanding what his team had been given. Not a symbol, not a political statement, a commander who could fight. Word spread through the SEAL community the way it always did, quietly, through encrypted messages and phone calls between team leaders, through conversations in secure facilities where operators gathered between deployments. Commander Rebecca Torres had led her platoon into a compound with 23 armed hostiles and brought everyone home. The HVT was in custody, 7 enemies neutralized by her personally, while simultaneously commanding the assault. The whispers changed. The skepticism evaporated. Torres became what she'd always been, but what others were finally willing to see. A professional, a warrior, a SEAL. In the weeks that followed, her platoon deployed on 4 more operations, each one executed with the same disciplined precision, each one successful. The doubt that had hung over her command disappeared, replaced by something far more valuable: trust. The kind that couldn't be ordered or mandated or created through policy. The kind that had to be earned through shared risk and proven competence. Hayes Cheers, who had doubted her most visibly, became one of her most reliable operators. He executed her orders without hesitation, backed her decisions in team meetings, and privately thanked her for teaching him something he should have already known. That capability had nothing to do with gender and everything to do with skill, dedication, and the willingness to lead from the front when the situation demanded it. 6 months into her command, Torres received a message from the admiral overseeing naval special warfare. He wanted to meet with her personally. The meeting took place in a small office at the command headquarters, just the 2 of them. The admiral was a man who'd spent 3 decades in special operations, who'd commanded at every level, who'd seen combat in 4 different theaters. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Commander Torres, I've been reviewing your platoon's operational record. 6 deployments, 14 operations, 100% mission success rate, 0 friendly KIA. 3 wounded, all minor injuries." He leaned back in his chair. "Those are remarkable statistics." Torres kept her expression neutral. "The team performs well, sir. The team performs well because you lead well," the admiral corrected. "I've also been reading after-action reports. I know what happened on that compound assault 6 months ago. I know the odds you faced. I know how you handled it." He pulled out a file and opened it. "Commander, the Navy put you in a difficult position, made you carry weight that had nothing to do with your capabilities and everything to do with politics and optics. That wasn't fair to you." Torres met his eyes. "With respect, sir, I didn't join to be treated fairly. I joined to serve." The admiral smiled. "That's the right answer. But here's what I want you to know. Your command wasn't an experiment. It wasn't a publicity stunt. It was a recognition of your qualifications and your record. And now, 6 months later, you've proven what we already knew, that you belong exactly where you are." He closed the file. "There are people watching your career, Commander. People who want to see you succeed not because of what you represent, but because you're a damn good officer. Keep doing what you're doing." Torres nodded. "Thank you, sir. That's always been the plan." The meeting ended shortly after. Torres walked out of the headquarters and back toward the team spaces where her platoon was preparing for the next deployment. As she entered the team room, the operators looked up from their work. Hayes caught her eye and nodded. A simple acknowledgement. No ceremony, no fanfare. Just the quiet respect of professionals recognizing another professional. Torres set down her gear and joined them in preparing for the mission ahead. This was where she belonged. Not because she'd proven something about gender or broken barriers or challenged stereotypes, but because she was good at the work. Because she could lead men into danger and bring them home. Because when violence was necessary, she could deliver it with precision and without hesitation. The rest was just noise. Years later, when Torres eventually moved on to higher command positions, her time leading that SEAL platoon would be remembered not as a landmark or a turning point or a moment of historical significance. It would be remembered as simply a well-led unit executing difficult missions successfully, which was exactly how she wanted it, because in the end, that's what mattered. Not the symbolism, not the politics, not the debates about integration and capability and whether women belonged in combat arms. What mattered was the mission, the operators, the results. Commander Rebecca Torres understood that from the beginning. It just took one firefight, 12 fallen enemies, and 11 minutes of sustained combat for everyone else to understand it too. She was dismissed as a female SEAL commander, right up until the moment she proved that the adjective before her rank meant nothing compared to the competence she brought to it. After that, she was just what she'd always been, a commander, a SEAL, a warrior who did the job without excuses and without apology. And in the teams, where performance was the only currency that mattered, that was worth more than any recognition, any medal, any praise. It was worth trust. And trust, once earned, was never questioned again. The mission was simple. The execution was perfect. The result was undeniable. 7 targets, 7 kills. One commander who'd finally been seen for exactly who she was. Not a symbol, not an experiment. Just a professional doing the work, and doing it better than most.